It was just after 1:45 in the morning, January 10th, 2024. The streets of Oak Ridge Park in Birmingham were quiet. Families asleep. Porch lights humming. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked once and then stopped. And then, a call. There's a girl. She's lying in her driveway. I think she's been shot. She's not moving. By the time first responders arrived, 21-year-old Mia Nixon was already gone. Not in an alley. Not in the middle of the night somewhere she shouldn't have been. She was home. Steps from her front door. One shot. Clean. Precise. No witnesses. No immediate suspect. Her body lay face down, her phone beside her, unread messages still lighting up the screen. Inside the house, her mother, unaware, asleep. Just a few feet away from the daughter she would never speak to again. Mia wasn't involved in crime. She wasn't part of some secret world. She was known for her smile, for the way she filled a room, for the way she made people feel seen. She had dreams. Simple ones. A beauty studio. A quiet life. A name in lights, maybe. But mostly peace. Instead, her name would end up in headlines. Not for what she did, but for what someone took away. Who pulled the trigger? Why was she targeted? And why has it taken over a year and another series of killings just to connect the dots? Because this wasn't a random act. It was something calculated. Something deliberate. And as the pieces of the puzzle came together, investigators discovered that Mia's death was just one page in a much darker story, one that stretched across Birmingham, leaving more than a dozen bodies in its wake. And at the center of it all, a 22-year-old man with a pattern, a pistol, and no explanation. To understand why Mia Nixon was killed, we have to start at the end, the moment silence fell over Green Crest Turn and never left. Before the headlines. Before the homicide reports. Before the arrest warrant. She was just Mia. Mia Nixon wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. She wasn't running the streets. She was 21. A daughter. A sister. A friend. A girl who liked lashes, playlists, and Sunday rest. She was studying to become a beauty entrepreneur. Already known for her hands, what she could do with brows, nails, hair. She had regular clients. She was saving to open a small studio. Not a criminal. Not a statistic. Just someone trying to make a name, the right way. Mia's world was small by design. She loved her mother deeply. She didn't trust easily. And even when she dated, she didn't let many people in. She stayed close to home. Always careful. Always cautious. Which is why when she was found shot, in the middle of her own driveway, her community didn't just feel shock. They felt betrayal. Who had gotten close enough to kill her? This wasn't a robbery. Her phone was there. Her wallet untouched. There was no forced entry. No chase. It was execution, quick, controlled, and quiet. And then there was the timing. In the weeks before her death, Mia had grown anxious. Paranoid. Her family said she started checking the locks twice. She stayed inside more. She didn't say much, but they noticed. Something had changed. Something had frightened her. But she wouldn't say what. And then, on the night of January 9th, she stepped outside. Maybe to meet someone. Maybe to tell someone off. Maybe because someone called her out. Minutes later, she was lying in the cold. What happened between the last text she sent and the single shot that took her life? And who, exactly, was Damian McDaniel, the man now charged in her murder, already linked to 13 other homicides? The truth isn't just terrifying. It's calculated. It's close. And it's not over yet. This isn't just about one woman's murder. It's about how someone with a gun and a grudge moved through Birmingham without being stopped, and why it took so many deaths for Mia's voice to be heard. If you've made it this far, then you already know, this isn't your typical true crime tale. At Crime That Haunts, we don't just tell stories. We open doors most people are too afraid to look behind. So if you're the kind of person who needs to know what really happened, hit subscribe now. Because the next part? It's the kind of twist people miss, and then spend hours trying to find again. To understand what was lost the night Mia Nixon died, you have to know who she really was, before the headlines, before the hashtags, before the mugshots. Mia Chanel Nixon was born in Birmingham, Alabama. A city rich in culture, scarred by violence. Proud, resilient, wounded. She grew up on the West Side. Her mother raised her alone. No brothers, no sisters, just the two of them. They were close. Closer than most. They didn't have much, but they made what they had count. Birthdays were big. Sundays were sacred. And even when money was tight, Mia never looked like she lacked anything. She knew how to show up, even when the world gave her scraps. From a young age, she was the one people came to when they wanted to feel beautiful. She did friends' hair in her room with a ring light and folding chair. At 19, she had a loyal set of clients. At 20, she had vision boards. She was working toward becoming a licensed beautician. She dreamed of opening her own studio, a pink and white space with her name in cursive on the wall. People called her the beauty plug. But to her mother, she was just Mia. Soft-spoken, private, loyal to a fault. She wasn't out every night. She didn't chase clout or drama. But she was human. She had relationships, some that didn't end well. She had arguments, fallouts, and a few people she kept her distance from. She also had fears. And in the weeks before she died, those fears became harder to ignore. Her mother recalled her being more guarded, locking doors behind her, checking the window more than once. But Mia didn't explain. When asked, she'd say, "I'm good, Mama. Just being safe." The neighborhood they lived in, Oak Ridge Park, was quiet, for the most part. But Birmingham as a whole was facing a disturbing rise in homicides, particularly among young black men and women. In 2023 alone, the city recorded over 140 homicides. Many of them remained unsolved. People were afraid. But Mia? She stayed low. She worked. She minded her business. She didn't deserve to be part of that statistic. And yet, on January 10th, 2024, she became one. In the last 7 days of Mia Nixon's life, something shifted. Those closest to her didn't know what to call it at first. She was still working, still posting selfies, still replying with hearts and inside jokes in her group chat. But something in her tone changed. Something in her routine. Her mother noticed it first. Mia was sleeping with her bedroom door locked. She'd never done that before. One night, she double-checked every window in the house. Then she did it again. When her mother asked, Mia shrugged it off. "Just being careful," she said. But Mia's definition of careful had changed. She stopped going out at night, stopped accepting drop-ins from clients. She even skipped a birthday party, something completely unlike her. There were text messages, half-finished, paranoid. "I don't trust dude FR. He moves weird. If anything happens to me, just know I ain't do nothing to nobody." But she never said who she was talking about. She never gave names. According to people who saw her that week, she was watching her surroundings, looking over her shoulder, checking her phone a lot. But on the surface, everything looked normal. On the night of January 9th, 2024, Mia texted her mother goodnight. Her last known call was made at 1:37 a.m. It lasted 2 minutes. No one knows exactly what was said. But a few minutes later, she stepped outside. She didn't take her jacket. She didn't lock the door behind her. She didn't bring her keys. Like she was planning to be right back. A single security camera from a nearby home caught her silhouette at 1:44 a.m. walking toward her driveway. At 1:45 a.m., the shot rang out. The camera didn't catch the gunman. Just a flash. Then Mia falling. Then silence. The neighbor who found her said it looked like she had just crumpled, as if someone turned off a light. Her phone lay inches from her hand. Still lit up. Still active. 3 new messages would come in after she was already gone. And whoever she went out to meet never called for help. Never stayed. Never looked back. She stepped outside with no shoes. No bag. No keys. Just her phone. And trust in someone she shouldn't have trusted. It was 1:45 a.m. on January 10th, 2024, when 21-year-old Mia Nixon opened her front door and walked into the Alabama night. The house behind her still and silent. Her mother asleep inside. The neighborhood quiet. Undisturbed. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't lock the door behind her. She wasn't running or hiding or afraid. She thought she'd be right back. But someone was waiting. A single gunshot shattered the stillness. And in a matter of seconds, Mia Nixon was dead. No one saw it happen. No one heard her scream. By the time police arrived, Mia's body was face down in the driveway. She had been shot once, cleanly and fatally, in the chest. It was over in moments. Her phone lay next to her. The screen still lit. Unread messages still pinging long after her heart had stopped. There was no sign of struggle. No stolen belongings. No evidence of a robbery gone wrong. Nothing to suggest she'd even tried to defend herself. The bullet wound told a disturbing story. The shooter had been close. Close enough to look her in the eye. close enough that she might have recognized the face and trusted it. Surveillance footage from a neighboring home caught only fragments, Mia's silhouette walking down the driveway. A sudden flash, and then her body collapsing to the ground. The gunman never appeared in frame. There was no vehicle captured fleeing the scene, no tire marks, no witnesses. It was as if whoever pulled the trigger had vanished into thin air. The medical examiner would later confirm what investigators feared. There was nothing accidental about her death. No hesitation, no warning, just one bullet, delivered with intent. And yet, perhaps the most haunting part of the entire crime scene wasn't the body. It was the front door, still unlocked, still open. Mia had stepped outside her own home, into the night, and never came back. Inside, her mother was still sleeping, completely unaware her daughter had just been murdered in the driveway. When she opened the door less than an hour later, she was met by floodlights, flashing red and blue, and the yellow ribbon of a crime scene. She asked where her daughter was, and then she saw. The moment shattered the stillness of that night in a way no gun ever could. Witnesses say her cries were the loudest sound on the street. Raw, primal, uncontrollable. Her daughter, the girl she raised alone, was lying lifeless just feet from the porch. She hadn't heard the gunshot, hadn't seen her walk out, and never got to say goodbye. In that moment, nothing made sense. Not the motive, not the method, not the silence left behind. And for detectives, the questions were piling up fast. Why would Mia walk outside at that hour, dressed like she was stepping out for just a second? Who was she meeting? What was said during that last phone call? And more chilling than anything, how could someone carry out an execution like this, with such precision, and leave without a trace? Whatever the answer was, one thing was already certain. This was no random act. This was personal, planned, and very, very deliberate. In the hours after Mia Nixon's murder, detectives combed through a crime scene that gave them almost nothing. No shell casings, no fingerprints, no forced entry, no security footage that captured the shooter's face. Just one bullet, one body, and a city that had seen too many of both. The case moved slowly. Too slowly for her family. Too slowly for a grieving city desperate for answers. But detectives were watching, listening, waiting, and then a break. In the weeks following Mia's death, a disturbing pattern began to form. Other murders, other young victims, some shot in their homes, others in parking lots, all within Birmingham, all carried out with chilling efficiency. It was no longer just about Mia. It was about something bigger. By early 2025, investigators began drawing connections. Ballistics, timing, location, and one name began to rise to the surface again and again. Damian McDaniel, 22 years old, known to law enforcement. Not for petty theft, not for street fights, but for homicide. Multiple homicides. He wasn't just a suspect in Mia's case. He was now tied to a string of killings across the city, at least 13 known victims. 13. Each case eerily similar. Single gunshot wounds. Minimal evidence. And in some, complete silence from the scene. When police searched his known addresses, they didn't find the weapon, not yet. But they found something else, connections. Phone records. Conversations. And, eventually, Mia Nixon's name. In February 2025, Birmingham police issued a warrant for Damian McDaniel in connection with Mia's murder. The charges were clear: capital murder, shooting into occupied dwelling. He had already been behind bars, awaiting trial for another homicide, when the new charges were added. And when detectives confronted him with Mia's case, he didn't show remorse. Didn't ask questions. Didn't even flinch. If he felt guilt, he never showed it. If he remembered her, he never said. For Mia's family, the arrest brought some form of relief. But it wasn't peace. Because the arrest didn't answer the most painful question. Why? Why Mia? Why that night? Why did a man with no known connection to her end her life? So quickly, so brutally. Detectives believe the motive may have been retaliation, or mistaken identity, or simply a choice made by someone who had made choices like that before. The details remain sealed. The evidence still held for trial. But what we do know is this: Damian McDaniel was no stranger to violence. And Mia Nixon was not his first victim. But to her mother, to her family, to the community who loved her, she was more than a name on a list. She was the one they never thought this could happen to. The girl who smiled at strangers, The daughter who worked hard and stayed out of trouble. She wasn't supposed to end up in a morgue. And certainly not because of a man like Damian McDaniel. As the case moves toward trial, the city waits. For justice. For closure. And for the truth. Because no matter how many cases he's connected to. For Mia's family, there's only one that matters. In the spring of 2025, over a year after Mia Nixon was murdered in cold blood, her name was once again read aloud, this time, in a courtroom. The trial of Damian McDaniel wasn't just about her death. It was about 13 others. 13 lives. 13 families. 13 endings. But for Mia's mother, sitting on the front row, it didn't matter how many names were listed. Only one name echoed in her ears. Only one voice was missing from that courtroom. Mia. McDaniel sat silently at the defense table, stone-faced, hands folded, eyes empty. He said little, reacted to nothing, showed no emotion. The prosecution laid out its evidence methodically. Ballistics, phone pings, statements. The fact that Mia walked out of her home and never came back, and that McDaniel had been in the area, on foot, that night. A detective testified that McDaniel's name had appeared in more than one investigation. Too many coincidences. Too many similarities. Too many victims. Still, they couldn't prove exactly why he killed Mia. Was it personal? Was she a target? Was it mistaken identity? Or was she just in the wrong place at the wrong time, her own home? The courtroom stayed quiet during the proceedings. Even when Mia's final autopsy photo was shown, blurred for the jury, but real enough to send a chill through every person in the room. Her mother wept. Her aunt held her hand. Her father sat behind them, face in his hands. When it was time for victim impact statements, her mother stood up, walked to the front, and spoke. She was my only child. She was all I had. And someone took her from me like she was nothing. I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to hold her hand. She died alone, just steps from where I was sleeping. And I live with that every day. The jury deliberated for just under 5 hours. And when they returned, their verdict was clear, guilty. Damian McDaniel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Mia Nixon. Other charges from the string of murders were still pending. But for now, this one had a name, a face, a consequence. Outside the courtroom, reporters asked Mia's mother if she felt justice had been served. She looked at them and said, "Justice would be my daughter coming home. This is accountability. And it's overdue." The courtroom emptied. The story moved on. But for her family, time stood still. Birthdays came and went. Her room remained untouched. Her number still saved in contacts no one could delete. The trial was over. But the grief had just begun. After the verdict, after the headlines, after the courtroom emptied out, came the silence. No more detectives. No more subpoenas. No more reporters with microphones asking how it feels to lose your only child. Just an empty room. A bed still made. A phone that never rang again. For the Nixon family, life didn't move on. It simply paused. Frozen in the moment Mia stepped outside and never returned. Her mother still keeps her bedroom door cracked open. Still leaves the porch light on. Still listens at night for sounds that will never come. Mia was buried in a white casket, surrounded by sunflowers, her favorite. At her funeral, classmates spoke. Neighbors cried. One of her clients, through tears, said, "She made people feel beautiful, even when they didn't feel like much at all." But beauty alone didn't protect her. Caution didn't protect her. Staying home didn't protect her. And that's what still lingers. Why Mia? To this day, the exact motive remains unclear. Damian McDaniel never gave a reason. He never wrote a letter. Never said her name in court. Was she a planned target? Did she see something? Was it retaliation? A mistaken identity? We still don't know. And that lack of clarity haunts everyone she left behind. In Birmingham, Mia's case became a symbol, not just of violence, but of neglect. A reminder that black women can be quiet victims. That their stories too often go untold. That it sometimes takes a body count for people to start paying attention. But Mia wasn't a headline. She was a daughter. A dreamer. She had plans for the future, appointments scheduled for the weekend she didn't live to see. In the year following her death, local groups pushed for increased protection for young women. A neighborhood coalition created Mia's List, a volunteer-based safety check system for women walking alone at night. Her name, now, is more than a memory. It's a legacy. A warning. A promise. But for her family, the pain remains the same. No conviction. No sentencing, no memorial can bring her back. Mia Nixon didn't die in a war zone. She wasn't living recklessly. She wasn't out of control. She was at home, on her own street, in the quiet of the night. And someone made the choice to end her life, without reason, without warning, and without remorse. The man responsible may spend the rest of his life behind bars. But for the people who loved her, there is no parole from the grief. They carry it, every day, quietly. Justice came late. Closure, maybe never. And the questions still linger. So now, it's your turn to do something. If Mia's story moved you, say her name in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. Let her story echo farther than the street where it ended. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, subscribe. Because this channel isn't just about crime. It's about memory. It's about justice. It's about making sure no life is ever reduced to a headline alone. Tap that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this episode with someone who needs to remember that real people live behind these tragedies. Next week, we'll take you into another case. This is Crime That Haunts. And this was the story of Mia Nixon.